and welcome to the Dr. Tech Show, where myself, Pauline Roche, and Sweyn Hunter, and occasional guests guide you through the world of online communications, a show which is the brainchild of the late great internet evangelist John Popham. So, great question for us to start the show with today. As usual, how is the weather where you are? Sweyn, let's start with you. How's the weather where you are?
You don't want to know. It's winter has returned with a vengeance. We've got 70-mile-an-hour winds in Orkney. All the ferries are cancelled, and on top of all that, it's snowing. It's proper snow. The lambing snows, as they call it, because as soon as the lambs start to appear in the springtime, the saying goes, the weather goes horrible and threatens to kill them. So let's hope they're all doing fine.
Unbelievable. And our special guest today is Coral Musgrave in Birmingham. Coral, how is the weather where you are?
Blue skies now, but really, really windy last night. So some fence damage, what a surprise. And then snow about an hour and a half ago, but like little haily snow. But it's cold.
We've had proper snowdrifts off the fields, the lot. It's a lot.
I've seen on Twitter people talking about
I've
snow.
seen it because I follow the Yorkshire Shepherdess.
Yes.
She's lambing at the moment, and it's proper snow in the Dale. So
yeah. And Sue Lawson in Stockport, who'd been on the guest before, tweeted or showed a picture of snow on a deck chair.
Yeah, that's it. I saw that this morning. Yeah.
And here in the west of Ireland, it is beautiful sunny skies now, and I was out earlier, very cold though, very, very cold. I was in swimming at the, what did I say, Monday, yesterday, Sunday and Saturday. Yesterday the water was 8.2 degrees, Saturday was 9 degrees, so chilly, bracing. But yeah, anyway, it's good to be indoors and we're lucky to be sheltered. So the things we're celebrating around this time, we'll go through a few of them. So April 5th to 12th is Dark Sky Week. And this is one that Sweyn came across. And so each year, the International Dark Sky Association hosts International Dark Sky Week to raise awareness about light pollution's many negative effects. And it's always held when the sky is darkest and the stars most visible. And this annual event was created in 2003 by then high school student Jennifer Barlow. And since then, International Dark Sky Week has grown to become a worldwide event and a key component of Global Astronomy Month. During the week, dark sky defenders worldwide connect over a shared goal to protect the night. And everyone's invited to join in this year's International Dark Sky Week. Whether you're an International Dark Sky Place, chapter, delegate, supporter, or a casual follower, there will be ways to engage and participate. And I believe you have a story about this, Sweyn.
Well, this is one of the things that the Orkney International Science Festival got involved with quite a few years ago now. And one of the small islands in Orkney, North Ronaldsay, is actively working to become designated as an International Dark Skies Place, or whatever it's, to get the status. And really, it's quite interesting when you start to think about it, all the artificial light that there is around at night time these days. A lot of it's necessary, but quite a lot of it's unnecessary, and it goes unnecessarily up. If we could focus all the light that we use at night, A, to be only what's required, and B, to be shining down onto the street or onto the ground rather than in all directions and upwards, then we would all see a lot more stars at night, and that's the whole purpose of the astronomy. And it's another excuse to highlight a great phenomenon that's happened during lockdown, which is that all sorts of astronomy clubs have moved their meetings onto Zoom or similar. And the two that I'm familiar with are the Highland Astronomy Club, where Eric Walker in Cononbridge has the most fantastic astronomy what's it called? Astronomy location, a location where you look at the stars. Yes, observatory, that's the word. And the other one is, and he and also members of Sigma, the Murray, that's the area kind of between Inverness and Aberdeen. The Sigma, the Murray Astronomical Club, both of them were very helpful in actually running they used their expertise in that they gathered in Zoom to run their monthly meetings or whatever, to help us run the Science Festival online this year in Orkney, and that was all great. So, dark skies.
Had you heard of dark skies before this, Coral? It was new to me.
Well, yeah, we were staying Brecon. Brecon beacons. So the town of Brecon is a designated dark sky area.
Okay.
So they've changed all the lighting around there,
Yep.
so it doesn't. Yeah. And we camped there a few times, but we stayed in like a pub with rooms a couple of times there, and it's amazing when you do look out at the stars.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful.
If
Yeah.
you want to catch some of Eric's astronomy, search for Orkney International Science Festival, Eric Walker, and you'll find the various talks that he gave this year. And his photography is just amazing. He's just an amazing astronomical photographer. So I highly recommend that.
It's one of the reasons why I love Crete so much, and Carol can relate to this, as we both love Crete so much. At night in Crete, because there is so little in the villages where we stay anyway, so little street lighting. You know, you look up and the stars are just amazing. You could just lie on a beach and watch them forever. You're a big Crete fan, aren't you, Carl?
I'm a big Crete fan. I can remember when I was out there in '79, the first time I went out, and we were sleeping. We were sleeping outside on a campsite. Trying to think of the name. I think on the south coast it was. Where's the place where they live in the caves? Malia.
Could be.
Yeah. So we was and you had the Milky Way above us, and it was just. It's like one of those standout moments that you've never seen. I've never seen it like that before. Yeah.
Glorious.
Really appreciate that.
Okay, so there's a couple of other celebratory dates we've picked up from around this time. And Tuesday, 6th of April, is National Library Workers' Day. We're very keen on libraries and librarians and library workers on this program. It's a US celebration, but nonetheless,
We can join
I
in.
think important, absolutely. And the hashtag is NLWD21. So this is a day for library staff, users, administrators, and friends groups to recognise the valuable contributions made by all library workers. And on January 25th, 2003, this resolution was proposed that in order to recognise the hard work, dedication and expertise of library support staff and librarians, that the Tuesday of National Library Week, which must be this week, be designated National Library Workers' Day, and that on that day, interested library workers, library groups and libraries should advocate for better compensation for all library workers. So we would certainly support that one. We regularly talk about how libraries, public libraries, Carl, have been on the vanguard of digital inclusion, like for decades, not just since lockdown. And I know you have some experience of libraries yourself, and your family as well as yourself.
Yeah, my husband still works for the library service. He's actually in special library services. So back at work now, delivering books to people who can't leave their homes, are housebound. They've had
Mobile, is it mobile library type service?
Yeah, they do the mobile library as well, but that's not in use at the moment in Sandwell.
Of course, yeah.
As a mobile library, it has been requisitioned by the council, but I don't quite know what the plans are. But the idea was maybe it would be a mobile vaccination centre. But I don't know whether that's happened at the moment. But obviously, the mobile library can't operate COVID safe.
Yes.
No.
Obviously, there wouldn't be room for people to get on and off. You can imagine if you've got lots of stops and different people getting on and off, it would be impossible. So yes, he drops bags of books to people who are housebound or less able, and they're doing they're just a doorstep drop before now.
Has there been a big change in services with him over the last 12 months?
Well, the first 6 months they were all working from home. I think we've got 3 libraries in the borough open now. You have to make an appointment. You have to say what books you want, and the plan is to open more gradually as they can make them COVID safe. I mean, easier in some libraries than others because of them. But yeah, a friend of mine who is a member of our local library, an absolute avid reader, and she's got her own booktube and everything. She reckons that she spent £300 on books this year because the libraries have been closed.
Oh, it's a shame.
Oh.
I mean, she said, I know that I'm really fortunate that I'm able to spend that. She said, my daughter reads a book. Daughter's about 14. She reads probably a book a day, her daughter. And She said, so what about families who can't afford that?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's the impact of libraries being closed. So.
Yeah, very much. Yeah,
Yeah.
huge. Okay, one more thing that we're celebrating this month before I come on to formally introduce Carla and all her amazingness is that April is Stress Awareness Month. And this has come from a website called stress.org.uk, who recently collaborated with Huawei App Gallery to conduct a study on stress, gathering data from 2,000 British adults. The research identified that 65% of people in the UK have felt more stressed since the COVID-19 restrictions began in March 2020. The three key causes for concern are feelings of disconnection, uncertainty, and a worrying loss of control. So they decided to weave these three key factors into this year's theme for Stress Awareness Month, and their practical approach ensures they're able to offer beneficial resources and effective materials to those who are struggling. And so Stress Awareness Month has been held every April since 1992 to increase public awareness about both the causes and cures for our modern stress epidemic. Despite this running for 29 years, they feel we've still got a long way to go. According to the Mental Health Foundation, 74% of UK adults have felt so stressed at some point over the last year they felt overwhelmed or unable to cope. So we hope that people who are feeling stressed will can get some resources from this website, and that we can help in our own way to alleviate some of their stress around digital inclusion anyway. Okay, let's do a formal welcome to our special guest today, who's Carl Musgrave. Carl and I were reminiscing before the program started about how we met, so you can tell that story, Carl, if you wish, to our listeners. But Carl has lived in Bearwood in Birmingham for over 30 years. She studied humanities at what was Bristol Poly, and then worked in London for a few years before moving back to be in her family when she had children. And her passions are travel, building community, and fighting food insecurity. Both of Carol's children work in IT or tech. Her daughter is a facilities manager looking after IT for large organizations, and her son is an IT tech for a large academy. So she doesn't know something they usually do, and she has her personal technician when she can't work it out for herself. We were talking about Zoom as well earlier, and Carl says until March 2020, she'd never heard of Zoom, let alone used it. But now her yoga lessons are held via Zoom, and she even worked out how to connect her laptop to the big screen and speakers.
Excellent.
I know the feeling of that when you can cast something to a big screen. It feels really powerful, like magic nearly. Carl was involved with developing trade school online, and we'd love to hear more about that. She learned to make pakora and dal with lessons coming from other people's homes, and she's just offered to teach bread making for the next round of trade school. Her daughter started a weekly family Zoom meeting to stay in touch during the pandemic. To distract everybody from the doom and gloom, she organised family games, including a virtual escape room, Countdown, and Pointless. For the past few months, her son has been the dungeon master in a game of Dungeons and Dragons. Big learning curve. Love to hear more about that as well. Carl says her brother-in-law was the least digitally engaged member of the family, but they persuaded him to join with the weekly Zoom meetings and then Dungeons and Dragons. And he surprised everybody as he went from zero digital engagement, wouldn't buy via the internet and hardly use social media, to being a competent online player of Dungeons and Dragons and user of Zoom. Carl's work background, having ditched the corporate world, wasn't for her. I can relate to that very much. She worked developing learning and skills employability programs with local authorities, education providers, and the voluntary sector, and as a community development manager with the Big Lottery Community Library program in Sandwell. And her most recent role was managing a local food bank and its volunteers. Carl volunteered with Lentil as Anything whilst travelling in Australia, which was the inspiration for the Real Junk Food Project in the UK. And this led her to actively seek to work and volunteer to challenge food poverty. She supported the Real Junk Food Project in its startup phase about 7 years ago and has since volunteered with your local pantry Smethwick and Smethwick Can, cooking meals for the local community. And she also volunteers with Bearwood CC, who are developing a community hub and activities. Which brings us right up to date with Carol's escapades, not mentioning weighted blankets, her blog, her Twitter persona, and so on and so on. So, Carl, you're very welcome to the show. We're delighted you were able to join us today. Please tell us. We always like to hear about how people got started on the internet and this great world of being connected. So can you tell us a bit about your early days in that sphere?
Well, thank you for asking me to your show. I'm really, really delighted to be here. Okay, early days. Gosh, before Facebook.
Oh, don't remember that.
Gosh, there was some like online chat things, wasn't there?
Mm.
AOL chat or something like that.
Okay.
I've got a teenage daughter, and we got our big old PC with a great big monitor in our living room. So that there was only one. There were no magic mobile phones with this or anything. So my daughter's 38 this year. So she would have been about 14, 15. And I think I was even then quite aware about sort of online safety. And so obviously we had it in the sitting room. And so my son just grew up with a computer in the corner of the room, where it was a learning-ish curve for my daughter. So that's probably in those days of AOL chat rooms. I think I very quickly thought, this is really dangerous. You don't know who you're talking to on the other side of the world. They could be anybody. They could say their name is, Jane, and they could be a guy.
And in fact, pre-Facebook, it was the norm to not use your real name when you were online.
Yeah.
We forget that.
Yeah, we do. And I can remember my daughter saying, "Oh, I've been talking to these two boys and this, that, and the other." And I was like, "Do you know what, Charlotte? How do you know anything about them?" And this sounds awful, okay, but I think it's a tale I do tell. She and I started chatting to them, and we gave not our real names, and we pretended to be two 16-year-old girls, and just talked to them about where we'd gone and stayed in Cyprus on holiday, in what hotel. We made up the name of the hotel and everything. And Charlotte said, "That's awful, Mum." And I said, "But they believe this." And I said, we didn't do anything horrible or creepy. It was just to get the message over to her that if we can do that, they can do that too.
That's a brilliant illustration.
I think parents are still being told to do some experimentation with their children about that, just to test, to be skeptical.
Like 12, 13 or something at the time. But so in a way I think, oh gosh, that's really creepy. I did a creepy thing, but in a way it was the only way that I could possibly get her to understand that you don't know who you're talking to on the side of the world. Yeah, when we'd been in Cyprus, we'd stayed in the Princess Hotel, and yeah, so that's what we did. And so that's that's how. And then I think, gosh, maybe Twitter. And again, I shared this story with you earlier, but I'd just been in my role at Sandwell Libraries, and there was this conference in Birmingham about what are libraries for, a debate, what are libraries for. And a mutual friend of Pauline and I, Lorna, said, should we go along to it? And we turned up and we sat at a table, and we were joined by all of these people. And as the sort of debate and the speakers started talking, everybody was doing this on their phone. And Lorna and I were like, well, that's rather rude. They're not listening to the speaker. What are they doing? And we were like, gosh, that's awful. This person's talking, and they're just chatting on their phones. But what we discovered was there was a hashtag for this conference, and people were sharing information about what was happening in the room, around the country and around the world. And people could also contribute by using this hashtag.
And live tweeting was invented.
Yeah. So then once particularly Lorna discovered that, she just went down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And so I just got involved with Twitter, and frequently when I had been things, I was the person that would be tweeting it live. I don't think you see that so much anymore. I don't know. I think the platform's changed a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But because, yes, now, obviously, meetings like that are on either Zoom or any other platform now. So, in a way,
yes.
It is unusual. I saw Laura Craven, who was also a mutual friend of ours, tweeting from a new tech group, Brum Tech Tapas, recently. Wow. And that was live tweeting, and it was quite unusual. I think one of the last things I live tweeted was very sadly, John Popham's funeral, which was I felt was important to.
Absolutely.
It was like the kind of thing he would have loved to have done, seen being done, and I felt it was appropriate. But yeah, it was. But you were saying, Coral, how we first met as well. Well, maybe there's bits in between. I'm sure there's lots of bits in between, those early days with you online. And so please carry on.
Okay, so yeah, and I think then I was working on the community libraries program then, and I don't think hardly any libraries apart from Orkney Library, which had the best Facebook and Twitter account ever, the funniest, best. And I was talking about how we should be communicating to people in Sandwell about what libraries are, because part of what we were trying to do was build them more as a community resource. Obviously, books and borrowing is obviously their core business, but we've got community rooms. We wanted to get more people coming in, and people still had got the idea that you could only come into a library to borrow a book and you had to be quiet, no shushing libraries and things like that. So we were just talking about how we can communicate it, and people said, but it's only Facebook's only for young people, it's only for I was like, oh no, the average age is at the time probably 40, and it is a really good way of communicating about what you're doing. So that was sort of when I sort of got more involved with that and following things like Orkney Library and really good Twitter accounts or Facebook accounts. And there's still some really good ones out there, but
I think we should give Shetland Library a mention as well, just to be fair.
Yes. Okay.
Balance.
Also, like City of Edinburgh Library, A Tale of One City is their email Twitter handle.
Their mobile library is called Bookie McBookface.
That's right.
Excellent.
So and used really well. I think it's great. When it's a platform that can be used really well. So I guess, and then I've just reconnected with people that I haven't connected with before through Facebook. And, like we say, you don't always meet people in real life. I have actually met a lot of people in real life that I met initially on social media, including Pauline, who shouted across a conference hall when I introduced myself at the library unconference. Like, I went, oh, hello, I'm Coral. Oh, you're Coral. And she's like across the room of 200 people.
I'm sure there's a term for that.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a term for that when you first meet somebody that you've only previously known of on Twitter and you finally meet them face to face. I'm sure there's a term for that.
I became an honorary Pauline that day.
Oh, you did, yes. There was a few of us. Was it Pauline Gagan? Was there? I think it was her. And yeah, it was those of us who felt that being online was very exciting. Using Twitter was very exciting. Great way of meeting like-minded people. So yeah.
Not, and with all due respect to Pauline and myself, not, as I was told, only young people. We were older, more mature women who were really embracing this as a way of sort of getting the message out, talking to people. As opposed to something like, my children not into social media at all, not at all, despite being quite techy. They're both on Facebook, but begrudgingly. But they're just not interested, and I think that's not uncommon.
I think you're right.
Yeah. So I think it's busting the myths about what it's for, and it changes. And another friend of mine who I was at uni with. She manages a lot of marketing for a number of organisations in Australia in the music industry, and so she's grappling with all their Facebook accounts. So she manages multiple Facebook accounts and Instagram accounts for them. And when the changes come through on Facebook, she's always having another rant about what you can do and what you can't do, and what you can now share and what you can do in groups. And often the changes happen there first. I think it's because as they roll out sort of on the day, because obviously they're ahead of us. But the platforms are changed, and it'll be interesting to see whether we even have Facebook in 10 years' time.
Well,
I'm not sure.
We don't have Bebo, do we?
It's hard to imagine life without it, because so many community groups, use it so, liberally for groups and pages. So now, but of course, Facebook is really clamping down on getting rid of fake, accounts. So people need to be aware. I'm constantly telling community groups not to create a fake, persona. It has to be linked to a real person, the page, because they can end up losing months or years of valuable community information if Facebook decides to delete them. And they're deleting accounts in the millions. The algorithms can tell them whether it's a fake account, and that just goes, and there's no recourse. So yeah. But how do you use Facebook now, Coral?
I generally just use it sort of just to keep in touch with people. So I often spend the morning talking to my friends on the other side of the world, which is just great. And just sort of like keeping in touch and maybe a bit of community stuff. But yeah, I mean, I've reconnected with people through Facebook that I hadn't seen for years. So when I was 15, I think, so that's some time ago, well, in the 70s, we'll say, a group of us all queued all night for a Rod Stewart concert in the days that you had to queue for tickets in New Street, Birmingham. And it was jolly cold. And I still remember the day because it was October and the clocks went back. So we had an extra hour in the freezing cold in sleeping bags.
What bad timing.
Bad timing. And I was there with my closest friend. And I was staying at her house that night and she was staying at my house this night. That's why teenagers can't pull the wool over parents' eyes, because we've been there and done that. And there was a whole group of us queuing. And gosh, I was, fast forward, maybe I think 8 years ago. I was at my mother's house and she was very ill. She was actually really ill. And I was waiting for the doctor to arrive. And I was just sitting, she was upstairs, and I think my husband, we were taking it turns to be with her. And I was just pootling away. And I was chatting to somebody that I know. And again, Pauline knows her, Steph. And somebody else joined in the conversation, and she got I'm not going to say her name online, but she's got an interest. I remember her maiden name, and she's got a double-barreled married name, so she's used both of them. And I was like, I think I know you. So I sent her a message. I said, I think I know you. Actually, we queued for Rod Stewart together back in the 1970s. Do you remember? And so we got back in contact again. And 3 years ago, 3 of us who had been in that queue in the 1970s went to see Rod Stewart again.
I thought you were going to say you reenacted the waiting in the queue. No, that would be ridiculous.
Fantastic.
Barclay card or something. Yeah, I think we paid I think we probably paid £10 or £7 or £5 for tickets then, and they're certainly not £5 anymore.
No.
But this person I was with took a selfie because she had homeschooled and she knew Steph because she was friends with Steph's husband's mum, because homeschoolers. And she just, she sent the selfie of us and said hashtag. What's the hashtag for Steph? Hashtag.
It wasn't Be More Steph, was it? No, I can't remember, but yeah.
But yeah, and it was just because of her that we ended up all getting back together and going. So
yeah,
fantastic.
I think for people who didn't grow up with computers, and we're all in that category, I think there's a kind of wonder that I remember. My granddad, who was born in 1913, I can remember him in the 70s and the 80s. He would still occasionally, when he switched on an electric light, switch the switch and go, it's like something special that you've not grown up with. And I think the internet's a bit like that for people probably about 30 and up, 35 and up probably. But I think part of the retreat from social media is that people who have grown up with it, it's just there, it's just a thing, and they don't need to make this special effort to be in these environments. They just kind of use it, or they don't use it. It's part of their life. It's quite interesting how that's all long gone. And it's another excuse to remind ourselves that digitally excluded people don't have to be very old. I mean, people can go through their childhood and just not quite connect with all sorts of things, including the internet. And therefore, it's important to keep that in mind as well.
Mm.
Well, that's been, I think, heightened by the fact that the schools have been closed. My son has just spent his time prepping laptops to send home to students who've got no laptops at home.
Yeah. We often talk about that on this show, as I'm sure you've heard from previous shows you've listened to, and it is an ongoing concern, but also obviously people not having connectivity, even if they have a device, and even if they have a device and connectivity, maybe they don't have the skills, and lots of teachers don't have the skills. Library staff may not have the skills. It's like the assumption is that we all know what we're doing, and like a lot of us don't, and even those of us who do have some skills don't know everything. And people can ask us questions, and we think, well, we don't know that, and they think, well, you do digital, you know all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
there's so much to know. But the other thing we've been talking about recently as well is an aspect of digital inclusion that kind of people. It's like people assume you're either digitally included or you're not, and like we kind of we're starting to see it in a much more macro way, in that we're talking about people who know they want to buy something online, might not necessarily have a device or a connection themselves, but they know somebody else who has, and they ask them to do it for them. And we're seeing that now, Sweyn and I, as that person is digitally included because they have a choice of how they connect with the online world and can get stuff from it without needing the device, the skills, or the connectivity themselves. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that's interesting. So we talked about my brother-in-law, my husband's brother, who's mid to late 50s, and he just was not digitally engaged at all. The only time he used a computer was at work. That was it. His laptop didn't even have a camera. So when we sort of suggested he joined in our family Zoom, he's like trying to explain to him how to get on, and we couldn't see, and we just knew that he obviously hadn't got a camera on his laptop, we were just like, So then we had to the IT techs in my family gave him advice about buying a camera and how to buy a camera online. He'd never done that before.
Wow.
Yes. We talked him through it on WhatsApp, because he'd never used WhatsApp before. So
lots of little steps, isn't it? Yeah.
But he'd never done anything like that before. Yeah. But once he had a really good reason to do that, to be connected. He lives alone. He lives in a part of the country. He's not seeing anybody. That his pleasure of sitting in a quiet pub in the corner has been taken away from him. His job's finished because he worked at an airport. So he wasn't seeing anybody.
Yeah.
So I think that was really important to him, and he decided that he would do it. So that was really good. And the learning curve wasn't like this. It was.
Yeah.
And he's just picked it up, and I suppose he's had a lot of support from us. I think he was saying on one of the shows that I watched a few weeks ago about how forgiving we are about making mistakes on this now. I think in the beginning everybody's like, what do I look like? Am I wearing the same clothes? And what if somebody comes and walks in the room? And now we're like,
oh my God, yes.
It happens.
We had a group of women on several months ago when John was still with us, and kind of a business group, wasn't it? Business women's group, and they were saying how each of them had their own kind of journey to becoming online, and they had dealt with, like, plugs being unplugged, cats, things falling over, connecting to the wrong account, being Zoom bombed, all that kind of stuff, and they had, they were these kind of, what women are like, Carl, saving your presence, Sweyn, but like women tend to be a little bit more relaxed about mistakes because they're used to just, kids doing things that they're not supposed to be doing, projectile vomiting and all that kind of stuff, and coming out both ends and all these kind of things we don't talk about very much online. But like, dealing with those kind of domestic, I think, issues kind of enables a lot of women to, I think, to just be quite, relaxed about a cat or whereas men might be a bit more
This is
rigid.
a school that's obviously a local school that I follow. And every Friday, the headmaster chats to all the students, no lessons. And it's like, introduce your pet. So the kids are encouraged to put their pets on Zoom and I think that's just really good, because I think they've had so much pressure on them. Say it's okay to do things like that.
Yeah. I think that's what people are starting to come around to, that we're not working from home in a choice way. We're working, how do they describe it? I did some kind of way of describing it so that it's clear that, this is not the choice. It's not a choice to work from home or from work. It's working from home in a situation where we wouldn't normally choose to be, and
It's getting done what you can do at home.
The doorbell will go in the middle of a conference. If you're in an interview, you can do everything you want to. But when we first started talking about trade school, we first got chatting about trade school, and I think it was the very first Zoom meeting that I did that wasn't with my family. And I was a little bit nervous because it's people that I knew most of the people. I knew Safi and I knew James, and it was good. And they were cabling my road, and I had just got on, and they started drilling out from my house. And I'm like, what do I do now? There's nothing I can do. And I'd got my headphones and everything, so it helped. I said, I'm sorry, they're drilling out from my house. There is nowhere that I can go in this house to escape it, because it's that sort of noise that goes everywhere. And they were like, yeah, it's fine, don't worry about it.
Tell us a bit more about trade school. Yeah.
I'm going to share the screen of trade school.
Cool.
But keep talking.
So trade school. It was started a few years ago in America. I can't remember which town, but the website that you're sharing may tell you a bit about it. But essentially, it's not a school and it's not trades. Because if you do actually type in the search engine saying trade school, you'll very often get schools that teach people trades.
Yeah.
So trade school is where one person or a group of people will share a skill with other people. Usually, or how we started, the very first one I went to was in Gather, a cafe in Dudley. And was it Gather? Cafe. And Lorna Prescott from Dudley CVS was running it. Funnily enough, it was about being organised. But yes, so basically you don't pay for this lesson. You go along to trade school to learn a new skill. It could be crochet, it could be how to repair something, it just could be anything. We have all different sorts of things. I think we've done flower making, we've done crochet. But it was in a cafe. Obviously, the cafe's closed, and we really like trade school. Could we do it online? Could we do it over Zoom? So a group of people who would run trade schools across the Black Country and Birmingham got together and started the idea of trade school online. So it's sort of a joint thing between Wolverhampton, Dudley, and Bearwood CC and a few other interested people from other organisations who we launched Trade School Online. So last year we had somebody teaching us how to make pakora, how to make dal, and there they are in their own home with all the chaos in the background, children walking in, teaching us to make pakora and dal. Some of us did it as along, some people just watched. But the thing about trade school is that you are sharing your skill, but you get no payment in return. You barter for items. And the person delivering trade school will talk about what things they would like to barter. So maybe some people will just ask for a poem. Other people will ask for a recommendation of a podcast. Some people will ask for seeds. Obviously, now we're not meeting in person. We're exchanging things that we can exchange digitally, such as recipes or podcasts is actually quite a popular one. I think people are finding more time to, or that's their way of switching off, I think. So the second round is coming, I think, in May. They've got a few people lined up again. And I decided to bite the bullet because I've been doing a lot of bread making in the last 12 months, certainly in the last 6 months. And I've gone from being not very good at making bread to being quite good at making bread.
Well done.
And I thought, you know what? I can do this, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm a bit scared. You know, all of those fears of that. Am I going to look stupid? Is it not going to work? Where do I have it? Can I get a camera? Should I position it? Will it look unprofessional? You know, all of those things. I'm thinking, goodness me, it's trade school and it's in my kit.
Yeah.
No,
That sounds
if I
great.
have to
I've not
move
heard
the
this before.
laptop to show the oven, I have to use
Yeah.
it. That's how it goes. But yes, I don't know what's going to come forward, but it will be interesting.
Have you bought much new kit in the last 12 months to help you with your online work, or have you had everything you've needed?
I've just nothing, not had a camera or anything. I mean, I know people who, like my yoga teachers, invested in some, you know, proper cameras, so a better angle and things like that. And I've got some friends who are Suzuki violin teachers, and they've had to do all of that. They've sort of set it all up. And yeah, the businesses that have been able to pivot really quickly from delivering in person to online are the ones that will do well. I'm thinking about Spin Sonic Circus, Rachel, for example.
Yeah. We've had
You
her
know,
on
she's
before,
circus
yeah.
skills. And she was, you know, going into care homes and she's completely pivoted her business in 12 months.
Another sector that's done really well, I think, has been dance schools, dance teachers. Some dance teachers have completely revolutionized the way they're doing their classes by Zoom or whatever. But the thing that's exciting is that they're able to get in to take classes, visiting teachers who might be members of a West End cast of a West End show or something. And so it just brings a whole new dimension to something that's still a local dance school, but you're able to import things that really would be very expensive and difficult to do if you weren't doing it online.
Yeah, I think people have made themselves a lot more available. You know, the rule of 6, where you used to say you could reach people within 6 moves. I think it's probably 3 now at the least. You mentioned Rachel Conlisk's Creative Active Lives classes. And in fact, my nephew, last night, my sister-in-law signed him up for the Minecraft coding club that started today. So, like, you know, I'm in Ireland. I tell my sister about this thing. He's into Minecraft. He's 9 years old, Dylan. Hi, Dylan. And he's
he
just
watches every
thrilled.
week.
He was thrilled with this morning. You know, he loves being on a device anyway. And here's an extra hour of time on his device, sanctioned by parents and family. But he had a wonderful time. So I told Rachel that, you know, they were both really thrilled, my sister and my nephew. And she was pleased to get the feedback because they'd had some issues with getting people connected and stuff like that. So that was really good. So I think, yeah, people are being able to participate. Rachel said last week they had somebody from California. So, you know, and other guests we've had on from other organizations have been saying, particularly like ACP, Sweyn, if you remember Cambola from ACP in Birmingham, they were having people log into their sessions from across the world, you know, in the thousands. I'm glad that they had the bandwidth to be able to, you know, offer people that connection. I think that's a thing I've been worried about, is that people might get overloaded, the systems might get overloaded, but, you know, bigger organizations crash. Google crashes from time to time. So, you know, again, it's not the end of the world.
We found it with Dungeons and Dragons because we play that online and we had really bad connectivity yesterday. And we just reckoned it was like Easter Sunday afternoon and with all apologies, all the geeks were playing D&D. But, you know, because what else is there to do?
Yeah.
And things like that. The other thing, so talking about connecting with people around the world, a friend of mine is a blue badge tour guide. And, you know, his job is usually meeting people from all over the world in Stratford or Birmingham or London and taking them around. And he's multilingual. So often it's in the summer, you know, all the French and German students or tourists around Stratford. And suddenly he had no work. And he's he's gone online and he does tours online. And he did one following a tram route in Melbourne a couple of weeks ago. And I sent the link to my friend who lives in Melbourne, and I said, do you want to come on this tour with me? So I'm sitting in my little house in Birmingham, and she's sitting in her house in Melbourne, and my tour guide friend in Smethwick is doing a tour of the inner city tram route with us, and we've got people from all over. And he's saying that I mean, at first, you know, it was quite difficult for me. His learning curve is being steep. But he's taught himself PowerPoint. He's got obviously hundreds and hundreds of photographs of it. But recently he's adopted a staffy and does lots of walks around the local area. So he's even put Benji's tour of the canals.
Absolutely. All the best bushes and lampposts.
An excellent and quirky guide. Name it. I'm going to give him a plug because he's brilliant. Ian Jalf, good £10 spent. I learnt so much about Birmingham when I did the Birmingham online tour with him. The things that he value. What he doesn't know, you couldn't put on the back of a postage stamp.
Ian Jelf.
Ian Jelf, Jelf. So yeah,
you'll have to look that up.
And he's fantastic. I mean, we did one of Up the Cape, which is Pauline will know, Cape Hill, Smethwick. Fascinating. We did a walking tour of that, and you'd think, oh gosh, you know, that's not really interesting. It was absolutely fascinating.
I bet. Urban history and urban tours like that are fascinating. Did a really good tour of New York when we was there in October, and again, I can imagine those tour guides really going to town online as well. Yeah, tour guides are very, very there he is are very flexible and adaptable people.
He's got a good line of quirky ties. And he has got an umbrella.
That's his Eventbrite page that I'm showing here. So there's various tours that he does. So happy to show that. That's a great idea.
Yeah, nice. Bourneville, Golders Green, Hampstead Garden Suburb, excellent. Surprising Sandwell, always good. Letchworth Garden City. Shakespeare Birthday Special on the 23rd of April. Several of those. Hidden London Docklands.
Oh, he's branching out to London now.
Wonder if he's got any in Scotland. Bath.
Bilston. Where else have we?
Excellent.
Lost the list now.
Scrolling through the list. Wolverhampton Wanderer. That's wonderful. Yeah.
We have a lot of tourist guides in Orkney because we are, in a normal year, we are a very popular cruise ship destination. In fact, certainly in the top 2 or 3 by number of visits in a year in the UK, apart from where they leave from and arrive back to. So we've got, and because we're an island, all the shore excursions have to be kind of locally provided. So we've got, I would say, probably somewhere between 50 and 100 tourist guides, because some of the big ships comes in. You need every bus on the island and every tourist guide who's done the course to do it. But I haven't actually seen any of them do these kind of online tours, and I think that might be quite a good idea to try and get I think the good thing about it must be that if you do a virtual tour, you must then want to go and do a fair portion of people must then want to visit and do the real tour or see the real place. I would have thought it's a great idea.
I would have thought so. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, good for people who can do that. You know, and again, it was. You're self-employed, you've got to find a way to have an income, and also when you are the sort of person that your job is talking to people and suddenly you're at home all the time.
That's right, it's not nice.
I mean, I did say to people, I mean, I Zoom my friend in Melbourne and an old friend who I've not seen for 40 years, and we'd not even been in contact for 40 years. This is like one of these things that happened in the pandemic. I'm on LinkedIn and I type in her name and I'm like, that's not the person I know, is it? Yeah, because she wasn't a student, but we were pretty wild in Bristol in my student years, and she's got like, you know, a really important job now. You know, I'm like, So I tentatively sent off a little message to her on LinkedIn, and it's like, who's this? I'm like, it's Coral. Do you remember we used to, oh gosh. And then like the next week we are Zooming after 40 years break.
That's amazing.
Catching up with everybody,
Yeah.
everything. And, you know, as soon as we can, we're going to go down and stay at her house. And we've just caught up, and we've got children about the same age. But she's
Great.
still the person I knew. But even though we've all had life happen to us, and yeah, you know, surprising things happen. You've just got to. And I was thinking, look, well, she doesn't like me anymore. Look, well, she's just not the person. Because, you know, we don't change that much. Not really.
It seems not, no.
I know, I see from your bio, and I know this anyway, Coral, but you've got experience with food banks, and one thing that's been suggested from time to time is that food banks would be a good place where people could pick up a device, for example, if they needed one, as well as their groceries. But I know that nationally, as far as I know, the Trestle Trust has decided not to do that, because they want, obviously, you know, eventually not for there not to be a need for food banks. It's very unfortunate that there's a need, but great that so many people are willing to help. Would you see, what would you think about that if people were able to get data or a device from the local food bank?
I think when we could actually, you know, have people in the building, I think having we had like people in there so that it could help them access services and signposts to them. And most generally, certainly where the food bank in Smethwick is, less than 5 minutes walk away is the library, which have got PCs. Yeah. So that would be where we would actually signpost people if they wanted to get online free. You know, there's free. Even if they've got a device, they often have not got a plan, that they're using up all the data. You know, they can sign on to the Wi-Fi in the library if they join the library. So, you know, with my library head on, when I worked at or volunteered at food bank, I would happily signpost people down to the library, because to me that's the obvious place.
Yes.
They don't just get access to Wi-Fi. They join the library. They might start borrowing books. They might start going on some of the courses that are offered there. So for me, I think that was quite important. But you know, that's my library head on. But often they didn't know where the library was. You know, and I'll go back to my library days. The first question I was always asked when I said, would you like to join the library? How much will it cost?
How much is it going to be? Yeah.
And, you know, there were senior people who really didn't believe that was the first question. And it would be, well, everybody knows that it's free. And I said, do they? Because that's the first question. Well, all our members do.
Yeah, of course they do. Oh, I know.
Yes.
It's frustrating.
I don't really know about that. I mean, a lot of people who come to food bank have got smartphones, a lot of them. And there was a lot of discussion about, well, if they can afford a smartphone, do they need food bank? Well, actually, if you are signing on at Job Centre and you've got to do a job hunt, you need something to do your job hunting on.
Yeah.
And the number of people from lots of different food banks, including the Trestle Trust, said, do you know what, if we could give them all a mobile phone to help them, that would be a really helpful thing.
Yeah.
But everything, there is a cost attached to that.
Yeah.
And I think that my view, this is not a view from any food bank, this is my personal view, if you can signpost them to somewhere that can support them, like a community hub or a library, I think that's probably a more holistic approach.
I think you're right, because it's such a big dimension of activity that you'd have to kind of add on, that it would be, the danger would be that you would kind of not do it, but not do it very well.
And they're getting more than connectivity.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're getting support, and they're getting
that's what's needed.
And then being included, especially if they're new to the area, if they're newly arrived or something. That again is a way to meet people and find out what's happening and find out more about their local area. So that's my view. I haven't read that, but as I say, I am involved with food bank still, but I'm not sort of actively involved at the moment, because when I was managing my local food bank, if we had a busy day, we'd have maybe 17 to 20 families come along. That would be busy. Now it's at the at the peak, because we did an emergency phone line, which I did from home, so people could self-refer to food bank, and I was issuing electronic food vouchers. And I had 2 hours on the phone, and it did not stop. And they were getting about 80 families a day. So that's not just 80 people fed, that's 80 families fed.
Yeah.
And I was speaking to a friend who said that one of the organisations locally that support families locally, they went and collected a food parcel on behalf of the family because they couldn't go, they've got children, or they may well have been self-isolating. And it was a line of 100 people queuing up, waiting. And I found it really disturbing just watching people line up outside normal supermarkets when all of this started. I found it really quite, it was a trigger for me, and I don't know why. I think it sort of reminded me of like the 3-day week or something back in the 70s. But, when people were lining up outside the job centre and things like that, the trigger is like, gosh, what have we come to? We're having people to line up so that they can get some toilet roll, for goodness sake. And then you get the line of people queuing for food bank, people who in many cases had never been unemployed before. When I was taking the phone calls from people on the phone line, it was families who had everybody always worked in their family. They'd never had to sign on and apply for universal credit. That's a shock. When they have been told by certain newspapers that everybody is living a life of Riley on universal credit, and they find out actually how much money they're actually coming into the house, and then you need to if you haven't got enough money for food, call the food bank. So big shock. I mean, I don't want to down, but and we've been brilliant around here, and I know other areas have. Nearly every street around where I live now have a weekly collection. So one person collects it all and takes it, and everybody, I'm thinking, if in my road there's 69 houses, if everybody only put one thing in, that's 69. If everybody only put one toilet roll in, that's 69 toilet rolls we'd have at food bank.
Helpful.
A lot. We're just asking a lot of people doing
do something. Everybody can do something. That's I think a main message we'd like to get across.
There was a national way of doing this, by taxation or somehow.
Ooh.
Probably being really controversial here, but I'm actually absolutely.
You better watch what I say, because we're within the short campaign period in the election for Scottish Parliament, so I'm not allowed to be political.
Universal basic income. I really think that this was a proper opportunity to experiment with universal basic income.
Yeah.
And I think it's an opportunity missed.
Well, that's a big subject.
We're not arguing with you there. Yeah. Okay. We will just cover a few of our extra stories we've picked up along the week. If we go over a little bit, Sweyn, is that okay? Just a couple of minutes?
Yeah, of course. The only people I feel sorry for are Hope Radio, because they have to fit you into an hour. That's their problem.
Haven't we talked weighted blankets? No, we'll discover that we'll talk about that another program. We just picked up a story recently on the BBC, which was about it's called "It's So Easy to Choose What Voluntary Work to Do," and this is for charities wanting to engage more volunteers and raise more funds to meet the continuing increase in need for their services. And this is a story where a number of tech firms believe they can help people to choose voluntary work. And this is the first company mentioned was called Deed Mob, which is an Amsterdam-based small firm. And they said the way to get more young adults volunteering is simply to make it easier for them to do so. And this was a company founded in 2016 by 3 student friends, and its website and app matches people's skills and interests with volunteering tasks and causes, and allows them to volunteer for short periods of time rather than to have to make long-term commitments. And I think this would appeal to quite a lot of people, who might want to just do something good in a week or a weekend, much like hacks maybe. So that's one from Amsterdam called Deed Mob. In the southwest of England, Anglican priest Reverend Simon Bale uses a Deed Mob powered website called Spark a Change to mobilise and manage volunteers from his congregation in Bridgewater in Somerset, and he organises grocery and prescription deliveries, dog walking and social chats for those in need via the website run by local charity Spark Somerset. And a couple of more organisations mentioned. Somebody in the northeast of England, tech entrepreneur Ashley Staines, was a volunteer for Age UK in Gateshead when the pandemic struck last year. He was a befriender, but he wanted to volunteer more time, but he wasn't able to. There was too much paperwork and so on. So it inspired him to launch an app called Volunteero, which is similar to DeedMob in that it breaks down volunteering into micro tasks, so people can volunteer to do one-off and small things. And the final company that's mentioned is another UK tech firm helping charities called Enthuse, which has built an easy-to-use online fundraising platform, making its money by charging charities a small fee. And there are other fundraising platforms available, but this is one called Enthuse in this story. So that was one that we picked up, and the other one that you picked up along the way, Sweyn, was about how to wipe your hard drive, which was from UK PC Mag. So do you want to have a quick explanation of this?
This is typically technical story from me. I just wanted to highlight this because the risk of handing. One of the barriers that some people find to donating laptops for use by schools or other people who need them is fear that their data might somehow be shared inadvertently as they donate the device. And it's just to say over and over again, that is a solved problem. We know how to do this. Somebody somewhere in the organization you're donating to, or in your local council or your local Citizens Advice Bureau or your local library, or somebody will be able to point you to an article like this, which will basically just give you step-by-step instructions about how to do it. Even if you don't do it yourself, you then know that it's been done properly. And when we were speaking to the Restart project a few weeks ago, they were saying that another route there is to simply replace the hard drive. That's a fairly low-cost thing to do. And if there really is, so one way or another, the perceived problem in donating equipment doesn't need to be a barrier to getting it done, because it's a solved problem. And this is just an example of an article that explains how and what to do.
Yeah, we're not saying to our listeners that they should do this. We're just saying, as Sweyn says, it can be done. If you feel able to, great. If you don't, donate your device to your local reuse project. There's a list on the Restart website of projects up and down the country.
If you're worried, ask them
Mm.
what they do to delete the data, and they will tell you, because it's a very important part of the service.
Okay, and we have run out of time, but we're really pleased we were able to cover so much in the hour. Carl, again, thanks very much for coming on the show. If people want to contact you after the show, where's the best place to find you online?
Oh God! Well, I am on LinkedIn. It's probably the easiest. I'm not really good at checking it. Twitter, Travelling Coral. Instagram, Travelling Coral. Facebook, Travelling Coral.
Excellent. All very good. Well, thanks again for coming on, and we look forward to keeping in touch with you. And thanks for all your expertise.
Thank you.
Thanks indeed.
And we'll close the show. Have a great week, everybody. Have a great week.